Even the dog seemed puzzled by the extravagance of her reactions. I put a gentle hand to my chest as I surveyed the situation. The turquoise-blue swimming pool some distance behind the lawn was no longer behind that lawn, but within my thorax, and my organs swam in it like excrements in the blue sea-water in Nice. One of the bathers had left the pool, and half concealed by the peacocked shade of trees, stood quite still, holding the ends of the towel around his neck and following Lolita with his amber eyes. There he stood, in the camouflage of sun and shade, disfigured by them and masked by his own nakedness, his damp black hair, or what was left of it, glued to his round head, his little moustache a humid smear, the wool on his chest spread like a symmetrical trophy, his navel pulsating, his hirsute thighs dripping with bright droplets, his tight, wet black bathing trunks bloated and bursting with vigour, where his great fat bully bag was pulled up and back like a padded shield over his reversed beasthood. And as I looked at his oval nut-brown face, it dawned upon me that what I had recognized him by was the reflection of my daughter's countenance. The same beatitude and grimace, but made hideous by his maleness. And I also knew that the child, my child, knew he was looking, enjoyed the lechery of his look, and was putting on a show of gambol and glee, the vile and beloved slut. As she made for the ball and missed it, she fell on her back, with her obscene young legs madly pedalling in the air. I could sense the musk of her excitement from where I stood, and then I saw, petrified with a kind of sacred disgust, the man close his eyes and bare his small, horribly small, and even teeth, as he leaned against a tree in which a multitude of dappled priaps shivered. Immediately afterwards, a marvellous transformation took place. He was no longer the satyr, but a very good-natured and foolish Swiss cousin, the Gustav Trapp I have mentioned more than once, who used to counteract his sprees — he drank beer with milk, the good swine — by feats of weightlifting, tottering and grunting on a lake beach with his otherwise very complete bathing suit jauntily stripped from one shoulder. This Trapp noticed me from afar, and working the towel on his nape, walked back with false insouciance to the pool, and as if the sun had gone out of the game, Lo slackened and slowly got up, ignoring the ball that the terrier placed before her. Who can say what heartbreaks are caused in a dog by our discontinuing a romp? I started to say something, and then sat down on the grass with a quite monstrous pain in my chest and vomited a torrent of browns and greens that I had never remembered eating. I saw Lolita's eyes, and they seemed to be more calculating than frightened. I heard her saying to a kind lady that her father was having a fit. Then for a long time I lay in a lounge chair, swallowing pony upon pony of gin. And next morning I felt strong enough to drive on, which in later years no doctor believed. The two-room cabin we had ordered at Silver Spur Court, Elphinstone, turned out to belong to the glossily browned pine-log kind that Lolita used to be so fond of in the days of our carefree first journey. Oh, how different things were now! I am not referring to Trapp or Traps. After all, gentlemen, it was becoming abundantly clear that all those identical detectives in prismatically changing cars were figments of my persecution mania. Recurrent images based on coincidence and chance resemblance. Soyons logique, crowed the cocky Gallic part of my brain, and proceeded to rout the notion of a Lolita-maddened salesman or comedy gangster with stooges persecuting me and hoaxing me and otherwise taking riotous advantage of my strange relations with the law. I remember humming my panic away. I remember evolving even an explanation of the Birdsley telephone call. But if I could dismiss Trapp, as I had dismissed my convulsions on the lawn at Champion, I could do nothing with the anguish of knowing Lolita to be so tantalizingly, so miserably unattainable and beloved, on the very eve of a new era, when my alembics told me she should stop being a nymphette, stop torturing me. An additional, abominable and perfectly gratuitous worry was lovingly prepared for me in Elphinstone. Lo had been dull and silent during the last lap, 200 mountainous miles uncontaminated by smoke-grey sleuths or zigzagging zanies. She hardly glanced at the famous oddly shaped, splendidly flushed rock which jutted above the mountains, and had been the take-off for Nirvana on the part of a temperamental showgirl. The town was newly built or rebuilt on the flat floor of a 7,000-foot-high valley. It would soon bore low, I hoped, and we would spin on to California, to the Mexican border, to mythical bays, saguaro deserts, fata morganas. Jose Lizarrabengoa, as you remember, planned to take his Carmen to the États-Unis. I conjured up a Central American tennis competition in which Dolores Hayes and various Californian schoolgirl champions would dazzlingly participate. Goodwill tours on that smiling level eliminate the distinction between passport and sport. Why did I hope we would be happy abroad? A change of environment is the traditional fallacy upon which doomed loves and lungs rely. Mrs. Hayes, the brisk, brickly-rouged, blue-eyed widow who ran the motor court, asked me if I was Swiss perchance, because her sister had married a Swiss ski instructor. I was, whereas my daughter happened to be half Irish. I registered, Hayes gave me the key and a twinkling smile, and, still twinkling, showed me where to park the car. Lowe crawled out and shivered a little. The luminous evening air was decidedly crisp. Upon entering the cabin, she sat down on a chair at a card table, buried her face in the crook of her arm, and said she felt awful. Shamming, I thought. Shamming, no doubt, to evade my caresses. I was passionately parched. But she began to whimper in an unusually dreary way when I attempted to fondle her. Lolita ill? Lolita dying. Her skin was scalding hot. I took her temperature orally, then looked up a scribbled formula I fortunately had in a jotter, and after laboriously reducing the meaningless to me degrees Fahrenheit to the intimate centigrade of my childhood, found she had a 40.4, which at least made sense. Hysterical little nymphs might, I knew, run up all kinds of temperature, even exceeding a fatal count. And I would have given her a sip of hot spiced wine and 2 aspirins and kissed the fever away, if, upon an examination of her lovely uvula, one of the gems of her body, I had not seen that it was burning red.